Welcome back. You're still tuned into Trading Hour. As promised, let's put spotlight on Zee Entertainment, the warrants issue that's ongoing. We understand from news reports that three proxy firms had advised shareholders to vote against the company's fundraise plans, which will eventually lead to an increase in promoter stake. The proxy advisory firms have also advised against ratifying two board appointments. To discuss more on this, Hetal Dalal, President and COO at Institutional Investor Advisory Services, and Shriram Subramanian, the founder and MD at InGovern Research Services, are joining us now. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining in. Hetal, let me start with you first up. Can you give us a sense of what is the core concern driving this shareholder plea or asking them to vote against Zee Entertainment's warrant preference?
Sure. Thank you for having me on the show, and good morning, everyone. There are three broad reasons why IiAS has recommended voting against the resolution for warrants. One is the fact that the company currently has about 2,400 crores sitting on its balance sheet and cash and treasury investments, and therefore raising another 2,200 crores in warrants and diluting shareholders by an incremental 15% is something that we find that rational to be unconvincing. The second is we just don't generally like warrants to promoters. Even in a warrant structure, what happens is while 25% of the money is being brought in, there is the remaining 75% has to be brought in over an 18-month period. And because promoters essentially are the ultimate insiders, they have access to inside information. So it allows them to ride the stock price. So therefore, as an instrument itself, we're very cautious in terms of recommending the use of warrants which are issued to promoters. I think third is the whole issue around the fact that investors themselves have voted against Puneet Goenka's leadership last year, and while there's been clearly his resolution to be reappointed has been defeated by shareholders, the board has been protecting him by letting him step off the board but continue to be in control of the company. And therefore, we're asking that fundamental question, saying if investors don't want the current leadership to continue, having them becoming more entrenched in the business by increasing their equity from the 4% to 18.5 odd percent is something that we don't think is in the long-term interest of shareholders.
Hetal, Shriram, good morning. Thank you for joining in. Shriram, same question to you, but you can look at this both ways, right? At one point, does this feel as if the promoters are trying to prioritize control instead of creating shareholder value? And if you look at the flip side of the coin, in general, when the promoter stake goes up in the company, it is generally perceived as a positive, saying that, okay, now the company can have more strategic direction, more clarity. But considering the fact that Zee Entertainment has had so much controversy in the past with regards to its promoters, does that become a null and void point?
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show. I agree with you. Most often, promoters increasing their shareholding is viewed positively because, given the fact that Zee has faced a lot of issues in the past couple of years, starting with the failed merger with Sony, to the promoters themselves have faced a lot of backlash on promoter funding, their other ventures, defaults to banks, etc. So from that perspective, what Hetal said regarding the warrant issue, especially when the money is not coming upfront, when the source of promoters' funds is now unknown, when they have defaulted in bank loans and others. So that's where the issue is. And the fact is that they had pledged shares in the past. That is what led to the loss of their control. Two is now, obviously, they are not committing here that they are going to pledge these shares. It is probably free shares, but yet the source of promoter funding is not very clear. Two is only 25% will come upfront, 99 rupees per share will come within 18 months. So all these uncertainties create a lot of backlash against the promoters, and investors are not very happy with the promoters also.
Okay. Shriram, just to follow up, you had suggested Zee should consider alternatives like QIP or rights issues instead of warrants. Why do you believe these options are better suited? Because they already have cash. Do they really need to use these methods for fundraise as well?
No, but if we give the benefit of doubt to the management on the board, saying that, look, we really have use for those funds, for the next 12 months or so, then these are other alternative means to consider, is all we are saying. Given the fact that upfront, if they don't need the money, then why use it? Why you issue warrants at all, where only 25% money will come upfront?
You know, Hetal, as you just mentioned as one of your concerns that you particularly do not agree to the concept of a warrant issue in itself, does that raise a concern in the minds of the shareholders as well? And the second bit is the fact that they have mentioned that they are going to raise that many that sum of money, and they have also mentioned, they have highlighted that they have plans for the next few years, but they have not disclosed specifics as to what they plan on using these funds for. Now, is that also a cause of concern, because it does not give you a clear idea of what this money is eventually going to be used for, especially because there is already money in the balance sheet?
That's right. I think when you look at warrants as a structure, and especially when they're issued to promoters, I think the fact that there is this whole 25-75 split and you can write the stock price is an element of concern. There have been instances in the past where warrants have been forfeited. And therefore, from just the company's ability to manage its own sort of plans and ensure that cash flow is happening, this becomes a structure which has a lot of uncertainty. I think in instances where you're seeing a 15% dilution, which is quite high, and there isn't a very strong convincing argument for raising that kind of capital, I think that adds to the entire concern as far as these resolution to issue warrants to promoters is concerned.
Okay. All right, Hetal, the other concern has been ratifying 2 board appointments. Is it pure governance issue, or is it related to those particular directors?
No, it's not really related to those particular directors. It is actually a governance issue. You have a board which has essentially ignored the voice of shareholders. When shareholders have voted against Puneet Goenka's continuation on the board, they've allowed him to still run the company by being a CEO, not on the board. And that's essentially cognitive dissonance to say that, well, he's not on the board, it's all right. You're protecting, the leadership from shareholder votes. And I think, therefore, we raise questions around the objectivity of the decision-making process of the board. And it is in that context that we voted against the board appointments. It really isn't, it's not directly concerned with the 2 individuals per se.
You know, Shriram, what does this do to minority shareholders? Every time something like this happens or a controversy breaks out, it is the minority shareholders that are always at a disadvantage. What does this now do to minority shareholders, especially because the stock has moved very significantly from the lows that it made at levels of around 89, the stock is already at 150. That's a 65% up move in relatively no time. What does that do to minority shareholders now with these new issues that are cropping up at the company?
Yeah, in fact, the very use of the term minority shareholder is a misnomer, right? In fact, the public shareholders are majority shareholders, and as the promoter has only 4% shareholding. And the fact is that the company needs to reconstitute its boards by taking the investors into confidence. The fact is that they have tried to ram in new board members without taking investors into confidence or getting investor representatives on the board. This is where I think the bigger issue of Zee is. I mean, they need to reconstitute the board in a manner which is totally transparent, which takes investors into confidence, where investors really like the profile of people in the directorships, and then the company can see a future which is, I would think, aligned with the interests of the promoter as well as the larger public investors.
Okay, we take that point, and thank you for joining in with your thoughts. That's the view coming on Zee Entertainment, their warrant issue and appointment of 2 directors as well. The stock, though, is at the day's high. It's up around 2% as we speak. At the day's high, it has recovered from the day's low. But you do remember to tune into the all-new CNBC TV18 Prime, bringing you insights from policymakers, business leaders, and economists shaping both the world and India's future. CNBC TV18 Prime decodes global shifts and their impact on Indian businesses, giving you unparalleled insights. Tune into CNBC TV18 Prime at 12 noon for the Global Reset, at 1 p.m. for the Big C and the Global Lens at 8:30 p.m.